Imagine working the closing shift at a busy diner, serving the last customer, cleaning the tables, locking the front door, and then simply disappearing. Not on the street, not on the way home, but inside the very establishment where dozens of people had seen you just minutes before. And when the truth finally emerges 70 years later, it comes from within the walls of the building, from a space so impossible that it defies all logic about how a human body could have been placed there without anyone noticing during decades of continuous operation. Before we dive into this story that will make you question everything about disappearances in public places, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Because the case you are about to discover is one of the most disturbing mysteries of the American diner era. This is not just the story of a woman who vanished. It is the story of how someone can disappear literally under the eyes of an entire community, of how a secret can be sealed behind bricks and mortar while life continues normally on the other side, and of how sometimes the answers we seek are hidden in the very structures we inhabit daily. The story begins in a golden era of 1950s America, where diners were the social heart of small towns, where waitresses knew every customer by name, and where disappearing from a crowded public place seemed absolutely impossible. Jennifer Marie Taylor was 24 years old in October of 1955, and to anyone in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, she was the friendly face that greeted them at Rosie's diner, always with a smile, always remembering how you liked your coffee, always making even the toughest days seem a little lighter. Standing 5 feet 3 inches tall, with a delicate constitution, but surprisingly strong from years of carrying heavy trays, dark brown hair that she kept in a practical ponytail during work, and brown eyes that sparkled with genuine kindness, Jennifer possessed that rare quality of making each person feel important. Born on August 7, 1931 in Winston-Salem, Jennifer grew up in a working-class family during the Great Depression and World War II. Her father, William Taylor, worked at the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Factory, the city's largest employer, operating machines that processed tons of tobacco leaves daily. Her mother, Elizabeth Taylor, did sewing work at home to bring in extra income, mending neighbors' clothes, and occasionally sewing custom dresses. Jennifer had a younger sister, Susan, 3 years younger, and a younger brother, Paul, 5 years younger. The family lived in a modest 2-bedroom house in the West End, a working-class neighborhood where pastel-painted wooden houses lined tree-shaded streets. It was a tight-knit community where doors were rarely locked, where neighbors had known each other for generations, and where children played in the streets until nightfall without worry. Jennifer's childhood was modest but happy. Neighborhood parties in the summers, church every Sunday, school where she was an average but well-liked student. Jennifer graduated from Reynolds High School in 1949 at 18 years old. Unlike some of her classmates who went to college or married immediately, Jennifer needed to work. The family needed every penny she could contribute. She got a job as a waitress at Rosie's diner just 2 weeks after graduation and remained there for the next 6 years. Rosie's diner was an institution in Winston-Salem. Located at the corner of 4th Street and Cherry Street, right in the heart of downtown, it was a classic 1950s American diner. Bright chrome facade, red and blue neon signs, large windows that allowed passers-by to see the busy interior, and inside, a long counter with red vinyl-covered swivel stools, faux leather booths along the walls, and an impeccably clean black-and-white checkered floor. The diner was owned by Harold Simmons, a heavy-set 57-year-old man who had purchased the establishment in 1947 and transformed it into one of the city's most popular locations. Rosie's opened at 6 o'clock in the morning and closed at 11 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. closed only on Sundays. It served breakfast all day long, hamburgers that people said were the best in North Carolina, homemade pies that veteran cook Martha Washington prepared every morning, and milkshakes so thick that the straw would stand up on its own. Jennifer worked primarily the afternoon and evening shift, from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 11 o'clock at night, 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday. It was demanding work, hours on her feet, hands constantly busy serving, cleaning, calling out orders to the kitchen. But Jennifer loved it. She loved the energy of the diner, loved meeting people, loved the feeling of being part of something that mattered to the community. She was exceptionally good at her job. She remembered regular customers and their preferences. Mr. Patterson always wanted his coffee black and extra hot. Mrs. Chen liked her toast, lightly toasted, not golden brown. Young Tommy Bradford always ordered a chocolate sundae after school. Jennifer made each customer feel seen, heard, important. Her tips reflected this. She consistently earned 20 to 30% more than other waitresses simply because people adored her. But Jennifer was not just an ichigo exceptional waitress. She was an exceptional person. Known for her kindness, she regularly paid for meals of customers she knew were going through financial hardship, claiming it was a mistake on the bill when they protested. She stayed late helping Martha clean the kitchen when the elderly cook was exhausted. She covered shifts for co-workers who had family emergencies without complaining. Jennifer still lived with her parents in 1955. At 24 years old, it was not uncommon for unmarried women to remain at home until marriage. She contributed to household expenses, helped her mother with chores, and saved a little for a future she hoped would include marriage and her own home someday. There was a young man, in fact, Daniel Green, 26 years old, a mechanic who worked at Green's Auto Repair, his father's business on West 5th Street. Daniel and Jennifer had grown up in the same neighborhood, attended the same church, known each other their whole lives. They began dating seriously in 1953, and by October 1955, everyone expected that an engagement ring would be coming soon. Daniel came to Rosie's almost every night that Jennifer worked, sitting at the counter, drinking coffee and eating pie, just to be near her during her shift. Jennifer's routine was predictable and comforting. She woke at 11 o'clock in the morning on workdays, late by most people's standards, but necessary when working until midnight. She had breakfast with her mother, helped with some household chores, ate a light lunch around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She walked the 20 minutes to Rosie's, always arriving at 1:45 in the afternoon, 15 minutes early to prepare before her shift started at 2 o'clock. The afternoon-evening shift was busy. It started with the late lunch rush, then calmed down a bit until dinner, which began around 5 o'clock in the evening, and continued until about 8:30. At night. After 9 o'clock at night, the movement slowed. Just a few regular customers, people leaving late shifts, occasional teenagers looking for a place to sit. At 10:30 at night, Jennifer began the closing process, cleaning tables, putting away condiments, preparing everything for the morning shift. She did not close alone. There was always at least one other person, usually Harold Simmons, the owner, or on days when he took off, another designated employee. Basic security and business policy. But this policy was about to be fatally violated. Jennifer had few vices or elaborate hobbies. She did not smoke, unusual for the time when it seemed everyone smoked. She occasionally drank a glass of red wine on special occasions, but nothing beyond that. Her passion was cinema. She and Daniel went to the Carolina Theater almost every Friday on her night off, watching everything from westerns to musical romances. Jennifer also loved to read, mainly mystery novels, and had a collection of Agatha Christie books that she read and reread. There was a gentle melancholy in Jennifer sometimes. She loved her life, loved her job, loved Daniel, but she also dreamed of more, traveling beyond North Carolina, perhaps seeing the ocean, perhaps one day having her own home with a garden. These were modest dreams by today's standards, but in the economic reality of a waitress in 1955, they were significant. Her parents, William, now 51 years old, and Elizabeth, 49, were proud of Jennifer. She was responsible, hardworking, kind. Susan, her 21-year-old sister, admired Jennifer and frequently asked for advice about boys and life. Paul, 19 years old and working at the same tobacco factory as his father, had a protective relationship with his older sisters. In October 1955, Jennifer's life was at a sweet spot. Daniel was saving for a ring. She had been promoted to head waitress at Rosie's with a small salary increase. The family was healthy. The future looked promising. But on an autumn night that seemed perfectly routine, Jennifer's life would end in such an incomprehensible and disturbing way that it would generate questions that would remain unanswered for 7 decades. And when the answers finally came, they would come not from investigation or confession, but from within the very walls of the building where Jennifer had spent 6 years of her life serving others, where she had been seen alive for the last time, where her body would remain hidden while the diner continued operating, customers continued eating, and life continued flowing around a secret sealed behind bricks. The night of October 28, 1955, was a Friday, and Rosie's diner was reasonably busy, but not exceptionally so. The weather was mild for late October, temperature of 16 degrees Celsius at 6 o'clock in the evening, no rain, with a forecast to drop to 10 degrees during the early morning hours. It was a typical autumn night in North Carolina. Jennifer had arrived at work at 1:45 in the afternoon, as always. She wore her waitress uniform, pink dress with white collar, white apron tied at the waist, practical white rubber-soled shoes, a small name badge on her left chest. She greeted Martha Washington in the kitchen, checked with Harold Simmons about the pie inventory, and began her shift at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The afternoon passed normally. Jennifer served dozens of customers, factory workers stopping for coffee and pie after their shifts, families with young children ordering hamburgers and milkshakes, businessmen from downtown in late meetings over coffee. She smiled, took orders, delivered food, cleaned tables, made fresh coffee, all in the familiar choreography she had perfected over 6 years. Daniel Green appeared around 7:30 in the evening, as he often did. He sat in his favorite stool at the end of the counter, ordered coffee and a slice of Martha's apple pie. He and Jennifer talked between her duties, familiar jokes, plans for the movies the next day. Nothing memorable. Just another normal night. Around 9:45 at night, Daniel finished his pie and coffee. "I need to go," he said, kissing Jennifer lightly on the cheek, a gesture that made Harold pretend to disapprove, but that everyone found sweet. "See you tomorrow night for the movie?" "At 7 o'clock as always," Jennifer confirmed, smiling. "I love you, Jen," he said, using the nickname that only close family and he used. "I love you too. Drive carefully." Daniel left at 9:48 at night. Several witnesses later confirmed seeing him leave. He waved to some acquaintances on the street, got into his 1952 Ford truck, and drove home. It was the last time he saw Jennifer alive. At 10:30 at night, the diner was almost empty. Only 3 customers remained. Mr. Patterson, a 68-year-old widower who came to Rosie's every night, sitting in his usual booth, reading the Winston-Salem Journal. 2 teenagers, Bobby Chen and Michael Stewart, both 16 years old, sharing a milkshake and talking quietly about girls, and at the counter, Kevin Walsh, a 33-year-old truck driver who had stopped for a late dinner before continuing his route. Jennifer began her closing process. She refilled the sugar and salt shakers on the tables. She made fresh coffee to ensure there was a fresh pot. She cleaned the counter. Martha Washington had already left at 10 o'clock at night. Her shift ended early, and she had an hour's walk home. At 10:45 at night, Mr. Patterson paid his bill. He always left exactly 15% tip, $1.23 that night. "Good night, Jennifer," he said at the door. "Good night, Mr. Patterson. See you Monday." She waved as he went out into the October night. At 10:52 at night, the two teenagers finished their shared milkshake. Bobby paid 35 cents plus a 10-cent tip. "Thank you, Miss Taylor," he said politely. "You're welcome, boys. Stay out of trouble," she joked. They laughed and left, pushing each other playfully as they walked down 4th Street. That left only Kevin Walsh. He was finishing his hamburger and fries, reading a trucker magazine. At 10:58 at night, he finished, paid his bill of $2.15, left a 50-cent tip, and departed. "Thanks for the food," he said. "Drive safely," Jennifer responded, as she always did. It was now 11 o'clock at night. Rosie's diner was empty except for Jennifer, and, crucially, Harold Simmons was not there. For reasons that would never be fully clarified, Harold had left earlier that night, around 9 o'clock at night, telling Jennifer he had a family emergency and trusting that she could close alone. It was a violation of his own policy, but Jennifer was his most trusted employee, and he assumed there would be no problem for one night. Jennifer locked the front door. Several passers-by later reported seeing her turn the key and put up the closed sign at 11:02 at night. She was alive, healthy, apparently normal. And then, in the next few minutes, perhaps 10, perhaps 20, no one would ever know exactly, something happened. Something that made Jennifer Taylor disappear completely from inside a locked diner in the middle of a city, without a single scream being heard, without a single sign of struggle visible, without any evidence that she had ever been there. When Harold Simmons arrived the next morning, Saturday, October 29th, at 5:30 in the morning to open for the morning shift, he found the front door locked as it should be. Everything seemed normal. He unlocked it, entered, and began his routine opening preparations. It was only around 6:15 in the morning when the first waitress of the morning shift, a 42-year-old woman named Doris Franklin, arrived, that someone noticed something was wrong. "Where is Jennifer?" asked Doris, looking around. The lights were on. The diner appeared to have been partially prepared for closing the night before, but there were signs of incomplete tasks. A coffee pot still on the warmer, now burned after hours turned on. Some tables not cleaned, the cash register still open. Harold frowned. She closed last night. She must have gone home. But something was wrong. Jennifer would never leave the cash register open. She would never leave coffee burning. It was completely out of character. Harold called the Taylor house. Elizabeth answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Taylor, sorry to call so early. Is Jennifer there?" There was a confused pause. "No. She hasn't come back from work yet. I thought maybe she had stayed at a friend's house, but—" "Harold, isn't she there?" Harold's stomach tightened. "She closed last night, but she's not here now." Elizabeth Taylor felt the world tilt. 20 minutes later, William Taylor burst through Rosie's diner, his face gray with panic. "Where is my daughter?" They searched the diner, every booth, the bathroom, the storage room, even the kitchen. They found no Jennifer. They found no purse, which she always left in Harold's small office. They found no coat that had been hanging on a hook near the back door the previous night. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the police were called. Detective Thomas Brennan, 46 years old, with 17 years in the Winston-Salem Police Department, arrived with 2 uniformed officers. They began interviewing Harold, Doris, and the Taylors, who had rushed to the diner. "When did you last see her?" Brennan asked Harold. "Around 9 o'clock last night. I had a family emergency and needed to leave early. I trusted that Jennifer could close alone. She's done it before a few times." "And you found the place exactly how?" "Front door locked, lights on, coffee still burning on the warmer, cash register open with the night's money, about $87. Brennan took notes. "So whoever was here wasn't interested in robbery. Is all the money there?" Harold checked carefully. "It appears to be. Nothing is missing that I can see." The initial investigation was intensive. Brennan and his team interviewed everyone who had been at the diner the previous night. Mr. Patterson confirmed he saw Jennifer alive and well at 10:45 at night. The 2 teenagers confirmed she was normal at 10:52 at night. Kevin Walsh, the truck driver, was located on his route and confirmed he left Jennifer at 11 o'clock at night, that she was alone, that she seemed completely normal. Several passers-by were located who had been on 4th Street between 11 o'clock at night and midnight. 3 people confirmed seeing Jennifer lock the front door around 11:02 at night. But no one saw anything unusual after that. No one saw Jennifer leave through the front or back door. No one heard screams or sounds of struggle. "It's like she evaporated," Brennan said to his partner, Detective Frank Morrison. Daniel Green was interrogated extensively, standard protocol, since boyfriends are always considered suspects initially. But Daniel had solid alibis. He had stopped at a gas station at 10:15 at night after leaving the diner. The attendant remembered him. He arrived home around 10:30 at night, where his parents confirmed his presence. He was there all night. He was visibly devastated by news of Jennifer's disappearance, and investigators quickly eliminated him as a suspect. Searches were organized. Volunteers combed through downtown Winston-Salem, checked alleys, vacant lots, the small nearby park. They even dragged Salem Creek, which ran about 8 blocks from the diner. Nothing was found. Jennifer's purse was never located. Her coat was never located. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist the moment she locked that door. Theories proliferated. Perhaps someone had entered through the back door, but it was locked from the inside in the morning. Perhaps she had left voluntarily with someone. But why? And where did her purse and coat go? Perhaps kidnapping. But there was no ransom demand, and the Taylor family had no money to pay ransom anyway. The most sinister explanation was that someone had entered the diner after Jennifer locked the front door, perhaps someone who had hidden in the storage room or bathroom before closing. That person would have attacked Jennifer, possibly killed her, and then… what? Taken the body? How? The front door was visible from the street. The back door opened to an alley, but still, carrying a body without being seen would be risky. And why? There was no evidence of sexual assault. There was no theft. What would be the motive? Weeks turned into months. Jennifer Taylor's case received significant attention in local newspapers. Waitress mysteriously disappears from locked diner. But without new developments, the story eventually disappeared from the front pages. Jennifer was declared legally dead in October 1962, 7 years after her disappearance. Her parents never recovered. Elizabeth developed severe anxiety and rarely left home. William became silent and withdrawn. visibly aging year after year. Susan married in 1958, but carried the pain of her missing sister her whole life. Paul joined the Army in 1957, partially to escape the memories. Daniel Green waited 2 years, holding hope against hope that Jennifer would simply return. Eventually, life forced him to move on. He married in 1960 with a kind woman named Mary, had 3 children, lived an apparently normal life. But those close to him knew that part of Daniel never left that October night of 1955. Rosie's Diner continued operating. Harold Simmons kept the business until 1968, when he sold it. The new owner renamed it Sally's Place, but kept the style and clientele. The diner changed hands several times over the following decades. Joe's Diner in the 1970s, the Americana Grill in the 1980s, Retro Eats in the 1990s. Each new owner made renovations, updated the decor, changed the menu, but the basic structure of the building remained. And somewhere within those walls, Jennifer Taylor was waiting for technology and circumstance that would finally reveal where. She had been all that time, not in some remote location, not in some secret grave far from the city, but right there, just a few meters from where customers ate, laughed, and lived their lives completely unaware of the horror sealed behind the bricks. The years transformed Winston-Salem as they transformed all of America. The tobacco industry that had been the heart of the city began to decline. Downtown, so busy in the 1950s, emptied out as suburban shopping centers attracted customers. Old buildings were abandoned, others converted, some demolished for parking lots. William Taylor died in 1982 at 78 years old, from lung cancer after decades working in the tobacco factory. Until the end, he kept Jennifer's room exactly as she had left it in October 1955. Elizabeth lived until 1991, dying at 85 years old in a nursing home, still occasionally asking nurses if they had news of Jennifer. Susan married, had 2 children, lived in Charlotte. She died in 2018 at 84 years old. Paul served in Vietnam, returned, worked as a teacher, and died in 2020 at 84 years old. Both took to their graves the pain of never knowing what had happened to their sister. Daniel Green lived until 2019, dying at 90 years old. His wife Mary reported that even decades later he occasionally woke from dreams where Jennifer was calling him, where she was, trapped somewhere, and he could not reach her. They were dreams closer to the truth than he would ever know. Harold Simmons died in 1995. Martha Washington, the cook, died in 1988. Detective Thomas Brennan retired in 1988 and died in 2007. The Taylor case remaining as one of 3 unsolved disappearances that haunted him throughout his career. As decades passed, the building that had housed Rosie's Diner changed several times. In 2005, the last restaurant closed. The building sat empty for years, slowly deteriorating. Windows were broken by vandals. Graffiti covered the exterior walls. The city considered demolishing it multiple times, but bureaucratic issues delayed it. Finally, in 2024, a development company purchased the building and surrounding land. They planned to demolish the old structure and build a modern apartment building, part of the redevelopment of downtown Winston-Salem that was slowly bringing life back to the abandoned center. On March 14, 2025, a demolition crew from Carolina Demolition and Construction arrived to begin the work. The supervisor, James Rodriguez, 48 years old, gathered his crew of 6 men and began the process of systematically dismantling the building from the inside out. They started by removing remaining equipment, then interior partitions. On the third day, March 16th, they were working in the area that had been the original diner's kitchen. A worker named Marcus Thompson, 33 years old, was using a sledgehammer to break down a brick wall that separated the kitchen from a small storage room. At 2:30 in the afternoon, his sledgehammer broke through a section of bricks, and he noticed something strange. Behind the bricks he had just broken, there was an empty space. Not plumbing or wiring as would be expected, but a significant void. "James, come see this," Marcus called. Rodriguez came down from where he was supervising work on the second floor. He examined the hole Marcus had made. Using a flashlight, he illuminated the space behind. And then, both froze. In the empty space behind the brick wall, clearly visible in the flashlight's beam, was a human skeleton. It was in a partially seated position, leaning against what appeared to be the building's original bricks. Dressed in the remains of deteriorated fabric, what clearly had been a dress, and beside the skeleton, a rotted leather purse and what appeared to be a coat. "Jesus Christ," Rodriguez whispered. "Stop everything. Nobody touches anything else. Call the police, now." Over the next few hours, the scene transformed into a complete forensic investigation. The Winston-Salem police arrived, followed by detectives, then by a complete forensic team. Dr. Patricia Chen, a 52-year-old medical examiner, carefully descended to examine the remains in situ before removal. "Female, based on pelvic structure," she narrated into her recorder. "Estimated age at time of death, early 20s. Complete skeleton, surprisingly well preserved. The sealed space provided a dry environment. Traces of pink dress and white apron. Significant cranial trauma visible. Occipital fracture consistent with strong blow or impact." The deteriorated purse contained items that had survived the decades in the dry space. A leather wallet with fragments of identification, some coins, keys, lipstick, and, crucially, a small metal name badge that corrosion had not completely obscured. Jennifer. Detective Michael Harrison, 45 years old, who had taken on the case, cross-referenced the name with historical missing persons records. Within hours, he had a match. Jennifer Marie Taylor, 24 years old, disappeared on October 28, 1955 from Rosie's Diner. The same building. "My God," Harrison said. "She's been here the whole time. For 70 years. The news exploded. 70-year mystery solved. Missing waitress. Found walled up in old diner, screamed national headlines. The story had all the elements that capture imagination. Decades-old mystery, young woman, macabre discovery. The reconstruction of what happened took weeks, but eventually painted a disturbing picture. Forensic analysis revealed that the brick wall where Jennifer was found was not original to the building constructed in 1947. It was a later addition, and construction records confirmed that significant renovations were made at Rosie's Diner in November 1955, just weeks after Jennifer's disappearance. Specifically, a new brick wall had been built to close off unused storage space, work approved and supervised by Harold Simmons. The contractor who had done the work, a company called Watson Construction, had closed in 1973, and all detailed records had been lost. But city records confirmed that masonry work had been done in late November 1955. The most likely theory, based on physical evidence and reconstruction, was frightening. Jennifer had been attacked on the night of October 28th while closing alone. The cranial trauma suggested a strong blow or fall. Her attacker, identity never to be definitively known, killed her or left her unconscious, and then, confronted with a body, panicked. There was a small storage space at the back of the kitchen, accessible only through a narrow door. It was used for rarely needed items, was cluttered and forgotten. The attacker hid Jennifer's body there temporarily. And then, at some point in the following weeks, when Harold Simmons decided to renovate and close off that unused storage space, someone, possibly the attacker if it was Harold or someone working with him, possibly construction workers unknowingly, simply built a brick wall, sealing the space completely. And Jennifer with it. This explained why she was never found, despite extensive searches. She had been there from the beginning, just meters from where investigators had been, from where customers had eaten for decades, from where life had continued normally while she lay trapped behind bricks. Harold Simmons was the obvious suspect. He had violated his own policy by leaving Jennifer to close alone. He had supervised the construction of the wall weeks later. He would have had opportunity and means, but Harold had been dead for 30 years, beyond the reach of justice, his motivations and guilt impossible to prove definitively. There was also the disturbing possibility that someone else, perhaps someone who had hidden in the diner before closing, perhaps someone Jennifer had let in trusting them, had killed her. And then, by macabre coincidence, the body was sealed when Harold decided to renovate. Without Harold alive to interrogate, without witnesses, without confession, the complete truth would remain forever obscured. Jennifer Taylor was finally buried in April 2025 in Salem Cemetery in Winston-Salem, in a section overlooking the downtown that had been her workplace and her accidental grave. There was no more direct family, all deceased, but surprisingly, more than 100 people attended the funeral. Descendants of people who had known Jennifer, local historians, and Winston-Salem citizens moved by the story. The headstone read, Jennifer Marie Taylor, 1931 to 1955. Waitress, daughter, beloved, finally at peace. The land where Rosie's diner had stood was preserved as a small memorial. The city of Winston-Salem installed a plaque telling Jennifer Taylor's story, and the space became part of a small pocket garden in the redeveloped downtown. The case serves as a somber reminder of several truths. First, that people can disappear even from public places, even surrounded by witnesses, if circumstances align tragically. Second, that sometimes the answers we seek are terribly close, hidden literally under our noses for decades. Third, that in 1955, without security cameras, without DNA forensics, without many of the tools we take for granted today, crimes could happen and remain unsolved indefinitely. And fourth, that the worst kind of mystery is not the one that is never solved, but the one that is solved too late to matter to the people who needed the answers. The family that spent decades in torment, the boyfriend who spent his BDQ life wondering, the friends and colleagues who carried guilt and confusion. For Jennifer Taylor, who only wished to live a simple but happy life, who loved her job, who was kind to everyone, who planned marriage and a future, everything ended in violence on an October night. And then her body, her memory, her very existence were sealed behind bricks, forgotten, while the world continued turning without her. 70 years is enough time for cities to change completely. Winston-Salem of 2025 is almost unrecognizable compared to 1955. The tobacco industry that employed Jennifer's father is long dead. The diner where she worked changed hands dozens of times before finally being demolished. The people who knew her, every customer, every colleague, every friend, all gone. And yet, when the bricks were finally removed, and Jennifer was found, there was a silent justice in it. She was not forgotten. Her story was told. Her name was remembered. And, although the answers came too late for those who loved her, they came. The mystery of Jennifer Taylor was solved. But the sadness of a life cut short at 24 years old, of a stolen future, of decades of family torment, of a body hidden in an impossible grave while life continued inches away, that sadness cannot be resolved. It remains as testament to the fragility of life, the cruelty that humans are capable of, and the crushing weight of unanswered questions that families of the missing carry. The walls were finally torn down. The bricks were removed. And Jennifer Taylor, who served coffee and smiles at Rosie's diner for 6 years, who loved and was loved, who dreamed of a future she never had a chance to live, was finally freed from her prison of bricks and mortar. She is at peace now. But the horror of what happened that October night of 1955 and of what was done to hide it still haunts. It is a reminder that sometimes monsters do not come from outside. They build walls. They hide evidence. They return to work on Monday as if nothing had happened. And for 70 years, they get away with it. Until bricks are finally removed and secrets impossible to bury forever are finally revealed.